Before you even start to practice a piece, there's some things you should do, and one of them is chunk your piece up into sections. So let's have a look at this piece that you're hearing. It's called First Snow, and it's a piece that I've written, and we're going to divide it into sections. It's a 2-page piece, and you might be tempted to make page 1 one section, and page 2 another section, but I still think that those sections are too big. Often my students practice sections that are just too big. Your brain is so busy trying to absorb all the information and execute it on the piano keys. It's much better to work in smaller sections and at a slower tempo, of course, but that's a whole other tip. But let's divide this piece into sections that are smaller than 1 page. But how will we do that? So this first page, you'll notice, has long slurs for each line of music. So we could use those slurs to help us define each section. So we would start off with section number 1 here at the beginning, and the slur takes us to the end of that line. Then section number 2 could be that second line of music where we have another long slur. Section 3, if we look at it, it's quite a bit like section 1. We're going to call this section 3, but we're going to notice that it's really quite a bit the same as section 1. Now when we get on the second page, we notice that this part is quite a bit different than the first part. But our first page had sections that were 4 measures long, so we can stick with that length and it will probably work. Use a pencil in case you want to change things later. But we're going to start off, we'll start this 4th section on the slur at the bottom of the first page, because the music, when you play it, you'll hear kind of comes in from that note. And then this whole next line will be part of section 4. And then section 5 will be this next line. So you might think section 6 will be next, but actually this next section is a repeat of the first page. The first line, the first section, up an octave. So instead of playing here, it's going to play here. So I'm just going to call this section 1 again, because I don't need to really learn it. I just need to move my right hand up an octave, or leave it up an octave, because it was up an octave on the line before this. And then this one finishes here just a little bit into that bottom line. And then we have 1 section left to number, and that's number 6. Great, so now that we've divided our piece into sections, we can start to practice. And what I suggest you do too, now that you have these chunks and now that you're zoomed in close on the individual sections of the piece, play it through 1 time, and as you play, stop at the end of sections if you want, there's no rush, but take notice of which one of these sections seemed the hardest for you. And if you found maybe this section number 4 that starts at the bottom of page 1, maybe you found this section was the hardest. So start there. You don't have to start with section 1. In fact, you probably shouldn't. You should probably start with the part of the piece that is the most intriguing or difficult or potentially problematic for you. And then you can break it down and work 1 hand at a time, very slowly. So if we take this section 4, section 4, and then it says an octave higher, then your 3 goes down to the note F, and then an octave higher, still F. So we've figured out something to do with this right hand. The left hand starts with a 5th, holds for 8, moves to D, holds for 8. So that left hand, it's going to look after itself, isn't it? But the right hand now we'll put together, and then we'll move it up to E. Now, I've noticed something. When I played this first part, I noticed that both of my hands are outlining the shape of a C triad or a C pentascale. So I've got those 5 notes of the key of C underneath my fingers. And when I move the right hand, it moves into that same shape. Then when I move down, my right hand might feel a little awkward, but I'm going to move down to find that D minor shape. So my left hand is outlining the 5 notes of D minor, D, E, F, G, A, and my right hand is doing the same. So my finger 3 can drop in on that F. So that's a little pattern. So not only do you want to chunk it up into sections, you also want to then work a little bit one hand at a time, but not too long, because you'll miss those connections of how the hands relate to each other. So go ahead and chunk up your piece that you're practicing or the next one that you're going to learn, and check out my playlist for more practice tips.